when you're ready to do
Ready.
it. And go.
Welcome to my art form.
Time for Post-Orthodoxy, a show about changing our minds.
With your hosts, Dark and Ainsley Sevier.
Maybe what they believe about reality isn't all of reality? What? I know, right?
We're on a mission to have a better time with more people more often.
The question is, how do you
Post-Orthodoxy explores strongly held beliefs, how those belief systems divide or connect people, and what might be found beyond those reality bubbles.
Keep calm, don't lose your head.
I've got a piece of chocolate here with me because I got anxiety about doing this.
Welcome to this neighborhood, neighbor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to KBMF LPV 102.5 FM and also streaming live potentially at americanradio.org. Or maybe you're watching us on facebook.com/AinsleyHelen or twitch.tv/theseviers. However you're joining in this afternoon, we're so glad to have you. This is Post-Orthodoxy. This is a radio show about changing our minds. I'm Ainsley Sevier, and with me in the station today is Citizen DJ Dark Sevier.
Hey, folks.
And we talk about difficult things. We try to have critical thinking. We try to help our friends have critical thinking. We try to discuss current events with a new perspective, and that's definitely what we're going to be doing today. Our title of our show this afternoon is Of Masks in Minneapolis. I like that, like a literary reference.
Very nice.
I've actually never read Of Mice and Men, but I know the National Theater in England.
Of Masks in Minneapolis.
Like, it's almost like a triple entendre because Minnie is a famous mouse.
Oh, wow.
See?
We're going down the rabbit hole. The title of the show already.
We're already down the rabbit hole. And so Post-Orthodoxy, like I said, is a show about changing your minds. It's a show about getting outside your reality bubble. It's a show about being able to talk about difficult things without feeling threatened, without feeling disturbed, without feeling confused, or feeling like you need to always have the same perspective on something all the time, or else you're a weak human.
Right.
If things aren't changing, they're dying. And today we're going to be talking about the ongoing meme warfare, M as in Michael, E, M as in Michael, E, meme warfare.
Meme warfare.
Going on around the coronavirus facts and factoids, and the religion of the mask, and how that pertains to the meme warfare going on around Black Lives Matter, and hashtag I can't breathe, and hashtag hold my blunt.
It's been going around in my head a lot. There's a philosopher, social philosopher guy named John Vervaeke, and he has a whole series that I'm in the middle of called the Meaning Crisis, which is a 16-part, hour-long each episode series on the title, the Meaning Crisis. But I keep saying memeing.
Memeing crisis.
Because there's a memeing crisis going on as well. I tried to tip you back there a little bit so you would fit in there. So, yes, we have a full show. We have 2 hours.
Oh, yes.
The bottom of the hour, in about 20 minutes, we're expecting a phone call from a friend of the show. I don't know if they know they're a friend of the show yet. Friend of the show.
A correspondent.
A correspondent in Minneapolis. I was interested if you've been hip to what's been going on in the country.
You as in Ainsley, or you as in humans?
All the folks. If
All
you're
the
hip to what's
folks.
going on, there's been some little hubbub happening in a few
And I'd
places.
like to point out for people who are like, how could you not know what's going on? Not everybody gets their news from the same place you get your news.
Right, so not everybody has the same idea of what is going on.
As a very simple comparison, Facebook versus Twitter. Facebook is a regurgitation site. So if you're finding news on Facebook, it came from somewhere else. There are very few accounts on Facebook that are just creating news fresh. Like, we like to read Heather Cox Richardson. She does a news piece from her historical studies perspective every day.
So she's putting current context in relation to historical context.
And so she's creating original news content on Facebook. But most of the time what you're seeing on Facebook is somebody who's resharing a meme from a different platform. And Twitter, on the other hand, has a lot of accounts that are creating news, almost like we have citizen DJs. These are citizen journalists.
Yeah, I find
people on the ground with their cameras saying, this is happening right now.
Right. Live streaming off of Facebook seems to be becoming increasingly problematic. I'm just anticipating us being knocked off at some point in the first hour of our show.
Yes, folks.
Which happens every week. We start doing our show, people start watching the show, we start getting some comments going back and forth, and then our live feed is interrupted. Mm-hmm. It's not reliable, it seems to me, if you're going to be doing live broadcasting.
Unfortunately.
So I've been trying to keep abreast of the hubbub, things going on here and there. And I'm not a big Twitter guy. I have an account, but I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter.
Yeah.
And today I realized, wow, that's where all the information is. That's where all the information is. This is where all the live feeds, live streams, clips that are sort of being circulated around. This is where the stuff that ends up on Facebook, a lot of it ends up being generated, which is on the Twitter feed.
Yes, most of the things you're going to see, if you're the sort of person that does catch news clips on Facebook, oftentimes they are the sort of news clips that are a screenshot of a conversation or a news bite that came from Twitter.
Right, so if you're just getting your news from Facebook, you're missing a lot.
Mm-hmm. And it's not a first source.
And there's a lot of misleading information. Today I made a post because some official in Minneapolis said that they're being invaded by white supremacists, and most of the arrests were out-of-towners, and then immediately somebody fact-checked me and said, well, it seems like if you look at the arrest records, the majority were from Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. So I know that there's a lot of information going on.
Yes.
There's a lot of misleading.
And I think we're gonna go through this conversation today. We have some really fantastic anecdotes about the health crisis that the planet is experiencing right now, and people's perspectives on the health crisis and how they're dealing with it logically or not. We also have a lot of anecdotes, unfortunately or fortunately, about the death of George Floyd and the riots and protests in Minneapolis, which are two different things, by the way. And we're going to go through each of those anecdotes and use them as a chance to fact check ourselves, fact check our news sources, and give examples of critical thinking questions that you could use when you hear something like a well-meaning country white guy showed up at the protest in Minneapolis to try to help the police and got dragged out of his car by 4 black men and they set his car on fire.
Yeah, that was the story I just watched him say on Twitter.
You can go to other news sources online and find out that actually he drove into a crowd of protesters, got out of his car with a bow and arrow, and started shooting people with the bow and arrow while yelling racist slurs.
Yeah, I watched that first. So I saw this old dude with a beard and belly get out with his bow and arrow like he was going to wade into
yelling and
the
screaming
fray.
And shooting protesters.
And when people said, hey, maybe not so much, he pulls out his bow and arrow, they're saying maybe not so much, and he actually tries to shoot a guy with his bow and arrow before he is completely mobbed, and they gave him a little treatment.
I also have, interesting anecdotes to that effect from my more conservative friends who are like, this case of the protesters being shot at by police is why we need Second Amendment rights.
More guns, yeah.
Because if you look at these photos, people who are carrying guns in protests don't get shot at by the police like the people in protests who are protesting peacefully who get tear gas, rubber bullets, etc.
That's the premise that they're saying to you.
They're saying this is why we need guns. And I'm like, or civil servants who enact violence upon peaceful protesters could get punished for a misuse of violence.
Yeah, there's a lot that went into the build-up to what we're experiencing.
Yeah,
right now.
we have a lot of dialogues and a lot of anecdotes to talk through. We really do want your participation. For those of you that are listening at buteamericaradio.org/stream, you're going to have the most reliable audio stream of everyone this afternoon. We also have our local KVMF community radio station locally here in Butte at 102.5 FM.
And Naomi's checking in from Hawaii. He said, welcome back to the studio.
Oh, it is so nice to be back in the station. We really appreciate what the station manager and other employees have done to make sure that the KVMF stations is a safe and clean place for people who care about those sorts of things.
So, a lot of topical material today.
A lot to cover.
Where would you like to start? So, in just about 5, 7, 8 minutes or so,
we might get a phone call.
Right.
Better.
Maybe I'll do a little build up to
Let's
that.
just plug it in and have it all ready to go.
You think so?
And then I'm gonna dry run in my mind right now. So this person might call us on that phone.
They're gonna they're not gonna call us.
On.
They're gonna Facebook message me. Hey, what's that sound?
So we'll answer on your phone,
Yeah.
and then we'll play it here in the station so that our live streamers on Facebook and Twitch will also be able to see what's going on.
Well, if the auxiliary is plugged in, they're still not gonna be able to hear the station.
They'll be able to hear it through here.
You think so?
We'll have to make it work.
Oh, you put it in queue?
We'll have to make it work.
Okay, very good. So here we are. I made a post this afternoon concerning the burning of the 3rd Precinct Police Station in Minneapolis.
Which is another news anecdote that a lot of people already have opinions about.
It was really interesting. So all the hubbub, there's a lot of things that happen. There's some peaceful protests. There is some looting. I think those can be dealt with as different topics.
Yeah, rioting and
Overlapping,
protesting are
yeah.
not the same thing.
Overlapping topics. And then there was the story of the 3rd Precinct Police Station burning. And I thought for such I think it's a significant thing. A public institution was burned to the ground.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Where were the police at the station? And who set the fire? I thought, well, everybody's running around with cameras. That should be a fairly easy story to piece together.
Like literally every civilian has a camera in
Sure.
their back pocket.
So I figured, well, I'll just go check out and see how that it wasn't so easy to find out what happened to the police station.
Because if you go and Google 3rd
There's
Precinct,
just a lot of inflammatory, pardon the pun, images
oh my
of the station engulfed in flames.
Yeah.
But not a lot of story about what happened there.
How
So
did that happen?
I found a local commercial news source that had a little blurb, and if you watch the video, you didn't really get the story. You
Right.
have to go read the text part.
Mm-hmm. Tammy Strong shared that with us.
Yes, Tammy Strong, thanks for sharing that. So I read that piece, and they're basically saying that the police were stretched thin. There was a lot of gathering of people, so they felt like I guess it was the mayor? It was the mayor.
Yeah, the mayor of Minneapolis
Said,
said,
well, we should just empty out that station.
we only have 800 police for the whole
Right.
city, and that's not enough to handle all the looting.
So they
just
boarded up the windows,
abandon ship.
and it didn't seem like there was much going on around the station when they decided to abandon the station.
Mm-hmm.
So the station was abandoned, and then somebody took down. This is what I've gathered from my researching. Somebody took down one of the wooden boards, used the board to bust the window, and it took a lot to get the station to get set on fire. There were several attempts it's not as warm, woody, squishy place. There's a lot of brick and steel there.
Right.
Anyway, the thing finally got set on fire, and that's a nice image. It's a nice news image. It's a good grabber. Oh, geez, the police station's on fire. That's something.
Mm-hmm.
So what I gathered from one of my sources in Minneapolis, who's just a resident person, who their Facebook feed and their Twitter feed is full of their friends who live there.
Right.
So they have a lot more going, they said the only way we can find out what's going on is actually just talking to our neighbors and looking at each other's phones of our videos of things that
Right. The most reliable way of finding out what's going on, because every news source that is putting out mainstream news has a particular spin that they're putting on it, and oftentimes you can't even tell that there is a spin. There are a lot of ways to craft a sentence, such as, protesters set the 3rd Precinct on fire, but they didn't actually say the protesters did it. They just said during the protests, the 3rd Precinct was set on fire, and you're going to think that means the protesters did it, but they're actually wording the sentence in a way, you know what I'm saying? So it's important, I think, for people to get news straight from the source whenever possible, and thanks to cell phones, we have a lot of source news these days.
So here's what I gathered. This is what I understand is what occurred. So earlier in the day, and from what I understand, there had not been any fires or looting. This is what I understand, and this is why I want to talk to more people to try to piece this story together. There's a very widespread video now of a dude with an umbrella busting out some windows at the AutoZone. Following that, people are like, well, who is this guy? Some texts, screen grabs surfaced where in these text screen grabs, it hit this black suited umbrella man.
Yes.
His ex said, oh my God, that's my ex. He's wearing my mask,
my gloves,
and has my hammer. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy busting the windows in the AutoZone, and she said he's crazy enough to do it or whatever. So so that's circumstantial evidence. We don't know who that guy is for sure. We don't know if that was actually his ex, but that is the story that went around. I shared it without knowing, but I tried to put qualifications on it. This looks kind of fishy. So there's the hold my blunt guy. So there's a guy walking around with a pizza that apparently confronts the guy. They almost get into a fight where the guy says, "Hey, hold my blunt."
Well, we can leave out apparently because we've watched this confrontation from probably 8 different camera angles.
Well. So I say apparently because other people are saying, well, in these cases, so the premise is that that actor with the umbrella is a what do you call that? What's the French word?
Agent provocateur.
Agent provocateur. And they say sometimes when these agent provocateurs do their thing, they have somebody else. It's almost like a symbiotic relationship that pretends to
double foil
to be in conflict with them, so other people stay away. So apparently that guy just walked the pink shirt guy with the pizza, because there were other videos past that scene where the pink shirt guy.
So he already has somebody confronting him. I don't need to confront him.
Right.
So it could
that's a story. Again,
it's a thing that happens, and it could be a double blind that's happening in this case.
So anyway, apparently that guy was followed back to the 3rd precinct, and so they said the story is that he was a police officer. He's a police officer stationed at the 3rd precinct, busting the windows, which started this whole trend towards busting out windows, setting things up.
Right. Well, he didn't bust the windows to do anything.
To
steal anything.
Well, yeah, he didn't. He just busted the windows and turned around and walked off. So soon after that, these stories circulate. There's a story from, I guess, the Twitter or the Facebook page of the 3rd precinct saying he's a good, upstanding man, and he didn't. These rumors are untrue, and he's just been out protecting the people.
So what they're saying is, Umbrella Man is not Jacob Pedersen. Jacob Pedersen is one of our police. The girlfriend really did have a crazy ex who was a police officer.
Yes.
And that's
Jordan Pedersen.
Jordan or Jacob, I don't know.
Jacob
Pedersen. And so he really does work at the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis. And the 3rd precinct said, I know you all think Jordan Pedersen or Jacob Pedersen is Umbrella Man who busted out the AutoZone windows and started the looting. But we're saying we know where he was all day, and he was out doing his duty protecting the city. We know where he was and who he was with.
And then people said, where was that?
And we haven't heard anything since then. But a lot of people don't, and that's the thing that we talk about a lot here on Post-Orthodoxy, is a lot of people in the U.S., when they hear what is supposed to be a trusted institution, such as your police force, saying, it's okay, our guy is not the umbrella guy, we know where our guy was all day, they just say, okay, end of story. The police station wouldn't lie to me.
Right.
And those are the sorts of things where...
Just like the image of the guy beaten up said, 4 black guys beat me up and they set my car on fire, when I had already seen the video of the guy walking around with a bow and arrow when he got his butt mobbed by a bunch of white people. I didn't see a black person.
Other white people mobbed him because he was shooting people.
He's going to open fire with a bow and arrow.
But he is in an older demographic, and this isn't me being ageist, it's just factual that older demographics spent the formative years of their lives pre-internet and don't necessarily always think of going to the internet to check their news. They trust.
He doesn't know how many videos of him shooting bows and arrows.
He's in an age group where he doesn't know that we can actually double check your facts now.
So if you're listening to us or have access to Facebook, you can find the video of us doing this thing, live streaming right now. We're looking for sources. We're looking for sources of information.
What sources do you like?
How do you gather your info? So for me, I've been doing a lot of collage work between mainstream news. My Facebook feed is full of libertarians, Republicans, Democrat, QAnon, ultra radical centrists, all kinds of types.
Super blue blood.
So I'm going through and finding
everybody's perspectives.
These different perspectives and their different sources, and trying to piece together something for my own understanding of what's going on. That's when I've discovered today, I guess I'm a little late to the game, that Twitter actually seems to have a lot more up to the moment. I also subscribe to Unicorn Riot because they were the guys that I got turned on to during the Standing Rock event, and they were one of the best sources of information of what was happening. They're on the ground, they're with a live stream, and they're
They're sharing what's actually happening.
They're not doing, sometimes they're reporting, saying
Mm-hmm.
this is what's happening, this is where we are, this is what's going on, but they just have the eyeball open.
Yes.
And then it's up to you to try to piece it together a lot of the time. But they at least are on the ground with the long live feed so you can watch what's happening and get a sense of the scene
Mm-hmm.
that's happening.
And so Lynn Ferguson, one of our viewers on Facebook, shared a link with us that she's been keeping track of from BuzzFeed News, which is a running list of hoaxes and misleading posts about the nationwide police brutality protests.
Okay.
I have not looked into that link yet,
Okay.
but it is something that's shared in our feed that people could look up if they'd like.
So on our live stream, that feed is there for you guys to help us guys get a grip on some resources.
So
what else is out there?
The BuzzFeedNews.com article says the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man who died after a Minneapolis police officer used a knee chokehold on him, has sparked protests all over the country. As they gained traction, so did online hoaxes and disinformation about those protests. BuzzFeed News is keeping a running list of false claims and misleading information. So the very, very first one says TikTok, here's one thing that they're false. They're saying this false, this rumor is false. TikTok is not blocking hashtags related to Black Lives Matter and George Floyd. The company said it is a bug affecting words at random. A search of TikTok confirms that the issue has since been fixed. There is the unverified account of who Jacob Pedersen is and if he was Umbrella Man.
That seems like a story that some top-notch journalist would be getting to the bottom of.
Mm-hmm, right? That would be the thing. And then they're going through, like a lot of people just go on the internet and find pictures of burning buildings and retweet them with news.
Yeah, somebody posted this picture of this little girl getting sprayed in the face with mace, and then somebody's like, yeah, that's from Brazil 7 years ago. Although there was a girl who got sprayed in the face with mace. But so it's really important to source your information and to have friends on your timeline that are not afraid to say, by the way, that you might want to get another source on that. I found something else.
And it's important for us in our souls to be malleable and unafraid of changing our minds and unafraid of our environment changing, so that when someone says, hey, here's a Snopes article about that, you don't have to be mad at them.
Or feel defensive, because
Yeah.
we all do it. We all end up in a rush to trying to get some news out there, some information out there, make bad choices.
And for a positive example, this BuzzFeed News is talking about how, unfortunately, the police in Minneapolis, for no reason, arrested a black man who happened to be a CNN news reporter, but did not arrest the white CNN news reporter a block away. So Minnesota State Patrol, in the course of clearing the streets and restoring order at Lake Street and Snelling Avenue, 4 people were arrested by State Patrol troopers, including 3 members of a CNN news crew. The 3 were released once they were confirmed to be members of the media, and CNN retweets that and says, this is not accurate. Our CNN crew identified themselves on live television immediately as journalists.
Well, there was a camera and the guy was holding a microphone.
Yeah, and then the BuzzFeed says, after CNN journalists were arrested live on TV, a tweet from the Minnesota State Patrol claimed they didn't know they were members of the media.
Right, just like our Jacob Pedersen is he's out there protecting and serving as a police officer, which that guy might be. I don't know. But these are the things that when people say, oh, well, the police department said that's not the case.
Right.
It might be the case. We don't know yet. So there's a
desire to know.
Yes.
You know, and that's that we talk a lot about our id desires on Post-Orthodoxy. There's a desire to know. We have an animal instinct desire to know our environment.
Well, yes, meme warfare is a very real thing, and I made a post earlier this week to try to get some perspective from folks on what was the issue that I was talking about, was the coronavirus issue. Oh, about like we don't know. There's I keep seeing the number 100,000 people died from coronavirus.
Anecdote time.
And I said, well, I think it's important to distinguish between the 100,000 people who died with coronavirus. Not all 100,000 died of coronavirus.
Right.
And so it sounds scary when you say 100,000 people died.
Which is only the U.S.
Of corona. Yeah, the U.S. numbers. So if you look into it, it was only 100,000 with coronavirus. We haven't gotten down to the actual number of people who actually died of coronavirus.
Right. This is
we're finding out the great majority of those people are already compromised and in danger of dying or already dying from something else.
Right. So I think that's really important to point out, and I'm going to share a link.
Our caller is going to call in about a minute.
Fantastic. That's great. I'm going to share a link that I found about comorbidities from the New York City Hospital.
Can you put that on
Q?
Q, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, okay. I can't hear it anyway. But
No.
Okay. All right. Carry on.
So we'll probably have to get back to this breakdown of the 100,000 deaths thing, because I think it's really important. For instance, in the 15,000 or so people that have died in New York City, only about 190 of them were in the hospital only for coronavirus and weren't found to have any other illnesses.
190.
Yeah, out of 15,000.
Out of 15,000. So.
And then there are about 1,000 where they're like, we just don't know. They died. We didn't bother doing tests. Go ahead and answer it.
Hey, see if we can make noises.
Okay.
I can hear that. Hello, is this Scott?
Yeah, sure is.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for calling in. So we're going to try to figure out. Give us a couple of minutes here. This is the first time we've done this. This method of trying
I'm
to.
going to let you manage the phone call, and I'll manage the buttons.
Okay. Can you just say hello to our listeners here at KBMF real quick, so we can see if we're on the air?
Hello, listeners.
Oh, that sounds great. So, Scott, thanks for calling in. I made a post earlier today trying to figure out, put together some information about what happened at the third precinct there in Minneapolis. My friend Reverend Jimmy James, I found out, is back in Minneapolis. He called me, started giving me the lowdown. I asked him if he wanted to be on the radio. He said, no. So he said, I know some folks that have good information, that are discerning individuals that might be able to give us a little bit more of a perspective of what's happening there in Minneapolis. And so you are the fall guy. Thank you for being a part of this.
You bet.
So you live in Minneapolis?
I live in a suburb.
Okay.
Called Eagan. And my girlfriend of 10 years, she lives in St. Paul. Just off of Grand Avenue, which had some looting just a couple of nights ago, and a few nights ago now, I guess. Yeah, there's just been a lot of good protests and things going on, especially this weekend during the daytime. And of course, the other night things got a little heated and ramped up into a full-on riot, looting, which was pretty sad to see.
Right, and just so you know, you're on the radio. We're a low-power radio station with a license from the FCC. So no calls to action, no qualifying money-wise, and don't use any of those words that George Carlin talked about.
Fair.
Okay, so you are. How are you getting your? I mean, you're close. I think proximity really helps to get better information about what's happening. How are you getting your information about what's happening in your neighborhood over there?
Well, I mean, my general media sources are the local news,
sure,
or just daily recaps generally, but they have been doing a pretty good job of keeping updates of what's going on, especially at night, because of the when things intensify. But there's a large sort of web of community groups, mostly through different apps, Facebook being the primary one, of local. There's some really tight-knit communities in South Minneapolis, neighborhoods, where all this stuff has gone down. Very integrated neighborhoods, but also very neighborhoods I am perfectly comfortable going in as a white man from the suburbs and love going down there. Lake Street's just a perfect dichotomy of everything that, and all of the immigrants that we have in the Twin Cities. It's wonderful. And the people that live there, those immigrants, those locals who've been there for years, they're there. It really isn't them that was starting it. It's a very just peaceful place. And I know we're talking more about how we get our news and stuff, but that's really where you get it, is If you're just looking for information on the community and how you can support it, that's where I go.
Okay, so yeah, I'd just like to hear your perspective since we've got you on the phone of what's happening there. What has been your experience? From what I understand, it's grocery stores are closed right now. Is that true?
Well, a lot of them are. Not all of them, certainly not. But if you're close to the areas around Lake Street where the rioting occurred and the looting occurred, most of those businesses have been looted, and many of them burned to the ground. The grocery stores in the outer parts of the Twin Cities certainly are open. The suburbs, even the inner ring suburbs. So donations are pouring in. There's many donation stations in the south part of Minneapolis, and I get this information of where you can send your donations, where you can send your medical supply type donations and things like that. There's groups for each one of these, and I have lots of friends that live in town who post lots of good information about where to go to give your immediate support. So right now, that's of course the focus. It's the immediate support, what you can do, and you can go online. Possibly, I'm not sure if it's really hit national media yet, but it's certainly local in these types of groups, and you can see parking lots filled with bags of groceries. And that's just, there's guys waiting in line to drop off groceries with $500 in groceries in their car. And they're waiting an hour just to get it to dropped off. And that's the kind of hope and the good information you get from the local neighborhood groups.
Yeah, that's not the information that I've been seeing online. The scene is, the train wreck always gets the headline. I wanted to ask you a couple of things because there's a few flashpoints that we have been following, and I wanted to ask you about putting some things, timelines in perspective for us. So the neighborhood where George Floyd was killed, from what I understand, there was a impromptu memorial put up there, and that's a place where people were gathering to honor this person who died and to bring attention to the event. Can you tell me what happened at that? I understand that there was some incident at that actual spot. Do you know anything about that?
Other than there really not much of an incident. Last night, at least, I think they boarded up kind of the businesses around there in preparation for possible rioting and things in that area, but most of the big rioting occurred up on Lake Street, which is a little bit north of where that incident went down with George Floyd.
From some, I heard this also from another resident there that where the folks were gathering, where that memorial had originated, that there was. The police came through there, even though there was nothing violent happening. There was nobody was protesting. It was, from what I understand, it was sort of a quiet protest, and that the police came through and destroyed part of the memorial. Is that anything you know anything about?
Not specifically, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I do know the police. I was out yesterday down on Lake, involved in the protest, and the quarantine, I adhered to the quarantine. Mm-hmm. There were lots of people that did not want to, and were going to stay there peacefully as long as they could. But they brought in National Guard and cops, and they essentially didn't let it get too late. They broke up all of the major gatherings really before it got dark, so that because they didn't want a repeat of the previous 2 nights, and I agree with that in a lot of ways. Really destructive for the community there.
Sure.
And the outside influence that is involved once it gets dark. It's prevalent. That's a narrative that is very common in the community and in the cities right now. There's lots of pictures floating around different groups of people in out-of-state trucks, no license plates, parked around town. There's incidents where the cops have actually pulled people over, found all kinds of gear in their cars for mayhem, basically, and that's what they didn't. We don't need that here. Dispersing the crowds, because that's naturally the group they go towards once night falls, and they can, I think there's just a lot of instigation going on that the local community, which is a wonderful, beautiful community, just doesn't need.
So how would you characterize, I keep hearing about the outsiders coming in. I keep hearing about outside agitators, and I also heard about a lot of vehicles that didn't have their license plates there. We hear a number of different things from the outside. We hear about protests, we hear about riots, and we hear there may be some agitators, some white supremacists. These are the things that we hear. How would you from the people that you're talking to and from what you've been gathering, how big is this outside influence? Like, how prevalent is this outside influence? And how would you characterize, is there any way to characterize them other than just, does it all seem like white supremacists, or are these people coming in to protest the killing of George Floyd? Can you speak to that a little bit?
I can't specifically speak to what their motivations are.
Right.
But it's kind of pretty well documented that when things kick off and initiate, that the fires aren't being started by the locals. That's just wouldn't happen. And it's pretty well documented that most of the people who have initiated a lot of the initial destruction and fires were documented white people. So,
hi, Ainsley here. And can you remind me your name one more time? Scott, thanks so much for calling in today. So I think there's maybe this mindset. Now, you're new to our Post-Orthodoxy show, but Dark and I both grew up in really conservative religious groups, and Dark was raised pretty super white supremacist, and we've both since done a lot of work to get out of that kind of mindset since then. But I've only really been out for about 5 years, and so it's very easy for me to slip back into the perspective of people who look upon peaceful protesters turned rioters and looters and just think that that's the natural progression of these things, and this is why mobs are always bad, and this is why you can't trust the common man, and so there's all these, I mean, like, you're saying it's very clear on the ground that the locals would not want to destroy their own town, and that they have been peacefully trying to protest police brutality and George Floyd's completely ridiculous death. But to people outside of Minneapolis, it's just like, well, they're protesting. I wonder how long it's going to be before it turns to looting, because that's just what happens because people are stupid.
Yeah, I actually have thought about why this progression has occurred, because now it's so, in my face, and even more so for the people who live in like Longfellow district in Minneapolis. It just goes in different phases, and whether there's if a peaceful protester ends up being involved in a riot, I think there's different motivations for that person, whether they're socioeconomic or racially based or
crimes of opportunity.
opportunity-based, yeah, that's a good one because, you know, no one really ever knows how they're gonna act in a really intense type of situation like that until it goes down right in front of you. And a lot of people were telling, a lot of the protesters were trying to hold down any type of destruction and things like that, defacing property. But you know, when you ramp things up to the intensity level of a full-blown riot, where there's you know, whole blocks burning down and whole shopping centers getting looted and then burned, that's sort of a combination of forces, if you ask me. Whether it's all of those, there's different groups there representing different ideals, and you know, from a general social standpoint, trying to live in sort of a peaceful and free America and an equitable America. You just get to a point where, you know, the worst comes out and shows in you.
So I've seen footage not just from your neck of the woods, but from all over the country. The most recent stuff that I've been looking at has come out of Salt Lake City. Not a lot of racial minority in Salt Lake City that I've seen in the videos. So I have seen a lot of footage from a lot of different cities: Portland, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Salt Lake City, etc., Atlanta. In this footage, what I'm getting are selected clips that people are using to share a perspective. And in those clips, what I'm seeing is actually more white people involved in the turning over of the police cars, the setting things on fire, than I am seeing of black people. Now, I don't know if that is just the selective nature of what is being shared around, but like, I just wanted to maybe get you to reiterate your sense of being on the ground in Minneapolis, do you think that the flashpoints are coming from these outside agitators in your estimation?
A little bit, yeah. I would like to believe that, but you know, we're a big metropolitan area, and we have our own, I'm sure, set of agitators that can cause problems for people. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we have crime, and these communities these are densely packed communities, and you get a certain element of crime when that occurs. But if I were to say, you know, 2 weeks ago that we were going to have race riots and Lake Street was going to get burned down, I would say, you know, no way. What's going to tip that off? Well, to have what happened right there in the middle of South Minneapolis.
And so, specifically, and I know this is, of course, still a very raw thing to talk about, but specifically George's murder, what is and I guess I'm using leading language already by using the word murder instead of death, but what is the local perspective on what happened? I mean, I've seen the videos and the breakdowns of the videos, and according to the facts that I've been presented with, he was being suffocated for 9 minutes for what seems like no reason. And so I'm really curious, as far as civilians of your town, like, people all over the world have opinions about what happened to George Floyd. What are the local opinions about what happened to George Floyd?
Oh, that he was murdered. I mean, there was nothing right about it. Everybody here has seen the video, probably more than once, or saw a clip of it and then talked about it. I have friends that I talked about it with, and I was like, you have to go back and watch the whole clip. Watch the whole thing, and then we'll talk about it. It just becomes obvious that he was in despair, and the general
the general awareness of everybody here is that that was the case and that he died at the hands of the cops.
Yes, it was definitely really weird for me as more facts came in about the circumstances surrounding his death. And now I have never been detained by a police officer before. I've been pulled over at traffic stops and things and for speeding tickets and such, but I've never had to, had handcuffs put on me. And I almost feel like that's something we don't really talk about. Like, a show of hands, how many people have had handcuffs put on you, But like, Dark has.
Yeah.
And so like, I think that's like one of those things that you don't talk about how much you're paying for your house. You don't talk about whether or not you've ever had handcuffs put on you. But watching this video and hearing the facts about how long this quote unquote confrontation was going on, it doesn't make sense to me that there was any legal or procedural reason for him to be restrained on the ground for 9 minutes.
Agreed. Yeah, there doesn't, and I agree with you. And when I say the cops, I don't want to generalize. I really don't.
Of course.
Guys in the video are the reason that George Floyd is dead. I mean, it's plainly obvious. So to me and to most people here, and that's the discussions we have. Everybody's like, yeah, oh, yep. Everybody you talked to in conversation yesterday at the protest, they just can't believe it. They're like, are you kidding me? Here's a video. If you show anybody a video of a guy basically dying at the hands of people, those people will go to jail. And so the real common theme is that justice needs to be served, and it needs to be a full-on, social understanding that needs to happen, and that needs to be not just talked about.
Right. So as far as that whole thing, one of the topics that we keep coming back to, or concepts on Post-Orthodoxy, is this concept of fundamentalism and black and white realities and the mentality that you have to pick a side. And one thing we were talking about today in our prep work for the show was this idea that either all cops are screw-ups or we need to respect the blue. And I think that's a false dichotomy, that we're forcing people to have an opinion one way or the other and nothing in between, when in fact there are bad actors in every group.
Right. And another place I get my news is police scanners. So when things were going down up in St. Paul, it was the middle of the day up on University, an area I'm very familiar with, and there was looting going on, and people were trying to start fires in auto zones and here and there, and they'd show up in a car and they'd split out the back, and so I was like, wait a second, this is the middle of the day. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the St. Paul cops were a little overwhelmed, but their scanner was a source of incredible information. And to your point, it is a false dichotomy. Listening to these guys talk about keeping the community safe was impressive. Listen, they certainly, cops do not have ill intent, and in general, that's just a point that I want to make, but I think that a lot of people do, especially in neighborhoods where that's all they see of cops is it's something like George Floyd happens, and that incident just spreads the fire, and you can't. And then the cops show up in riot gear, and
there were
batons and stuff, and I'm like, there's 80 cops right there. There's probably 5 of them are the types of guys that would have multiple incidents or something, multiple complaints, things like that against them. And the rest of them, are making a wage and trying to help the community.
Yeah, we can't.
I'm maybe a glasses half full person, but
We can't say all cops are bad any more than we can say all politicians are bad or all pastors are good. You can't say all anything.
Or all black is this, or all white is this, or all black is this, or all yellow is this. We can't. But we're being in the meme warfare, in the memeplex. People start picking sides, and if they are outraged about what happened with George Floyd, they may find some meme that is talking about bad actors on the police force, and then the next day they're posting a meme that says all cops are bad. And I think that's the false dichotomy that we keep getting squeezed into.
That
we have
is unhealthy.
We have to pick a side, and it has to be black and white. Now, so I appreciate you calling in, and I don't want to keep you for too long. I would like to give you an opportunity to share any perspective from somebody who's there in the neighborhood and who's getting different sources of information than a lot of us out here are. If there's anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you off the phone.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. If it's not from a social perspective, we got to take care of each other. If you are in a predominantly white neighborhood and you don't know anybody that has color on their skin or you're averse to them, I would challenge you to go up and have a normal conversation. How's your day? My name is this. My name is this. You can't really shake hands these days. A lot of places people are wearing masks, but
I'm starting a curtsying trend.
Yeah, hide behind your mask. And talk. That's fine. And that's just something that needs to happen more on an individual level. People can get locked into perspectives because of whatever bubble or community they're in. Can be family related, can be just town related, whatever. Online, social media related, and I would just challenge you to break out of a norm, whatever it is, and reach out to someone else and get a perspective.
Right. Well, Scott, thanks for calling in and sharing your perspective with us on the show. It's the top of the hour, so we're going to go to our regularly scheduled business and come back and do the next hour. But thanks for participating and thanks for sharing.
We really appreciate you calling in. Thanks, and stay safe out there.
Thanks.
All right. That was Scott calling from outside Minneapolis. It's the top of the hour.
Whew. That wasn't so bad, technologically speaking.
No, we did get cut off once.
Well, yes.
The live stream got cut off.
Facebook cut us off, but as far as sharing a phone call with our radio listeners and our live stream listeners, I feel like that went through pretty well.
Are we still live?
We are still live on Facebook.
Okay, we're going to take a little break here and do our top of the hour business.
All right, you have a song for us to play?
Song? No.
Okay. Sounds good.
No, we just got to do a little break and we'll be back in a few minutes.
So for those of you that might just now be tuning in, we're listening to, this is KBMF LP Butte 102.5 FM. We are talking about of masks in Minneapolis. And that is not to say that we're trying to be flippant about what's going on in protests all over the world today. In fact, there are protesters on the steps of the courthouse outside KBMF right now.
Yeah, it's Sunday afternoon, and if you want to come, if you're out of town, there are people who are having their voice heard on the steps of the...
I see signs that say I can't breathe, and I see signs talking about Trayvon Martin. I see there are some people that are speaking out about what's going on in the country right now in an effort, I would think, to keep the story going long enough that something actually changes. And we're going to talk about the Minneapolis race riots in context with the LA race riots of the 90s, as well as in context with Standing Rock and the 99%.
Occupy Wall Street, yeah.
Yep.
So we'll be back in just a few minutes. Please stick around with us.
This is only 22 seconds long.
That's okay.
Okay. It's me juggling.
Yes, right.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen.
Very good. Okay.
All
Well,
right.
that was nice. So I was talking to a friend of mine in Minneapolis who turned us on to Scott, and I got some information from him. He was rattling off a whole laundry list of things that I thought were very interesting. I appreciate Scott calling in and sharing his perspective. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is one thing that I'm not seeing so much on the news right now is what he was talking about, which people showing up with bags of groceries, entire community groups getting together to do cleanup in the aftermath of what's been going on.
Sheila Kentucky Youngblood says that she has friends all over Minneapolis who are going out and shoveling up ash and boarding up windows for businesses.
Right. I think it's important. I think one important aspect of what we're talking about is there is the if it leads, it bleeds meme headline video clip, which always shows the fire,
if it bleeds,
the bullet,
it bleeds.
the destruction. But then there's a lot of other stuff going on. There's a lot of aspects of the story. I think one thing that's very important right now is the larger zoom out, is this sort of call to arms that has been fomented through this QAnon phenomena for the last several years, that people have been on the edge of their seats in the QAnon world, waiting for the storm, waiting for the thing, waiting for a call to action, a call to arms. And I'm hearing a lot of reports of outside agitators in Minneapolis in particular, who are going to try to provoke problems. So I don't know if you can always trust when a building catches on fire and people are jumping in and out of the windows. I don't know if you can trust
Maybe he's
the narrative, the spin that's going along in the chyron that's going along with that image that you're watching. So,
well, I think we talk about on Post-Orthodoxy trying to get beyond fundamentalist thoughts, trying to get beyond black and white thinking, to having to pick a team, having to pick a side, having to have an opinion right now that's very strong, and then verbalize it, and then don't back down from your opinion. And the positive side of that is learning to understand that we as civilians of the planet actually have more in common than we have differences, and that if we can focus on those things, we would actually get some work done instead of allowing the people in power to keep us fighting each other all the time. So when you hear people talk about things like QAnon or things, these kinds of groups, intensive groups, you might be prone to think, well, those are just crazy people who are out to watch the world burn, Batman's butler said, some men just want to watch the world burn.
Right.
But in fact, QAnoners have formed a group because they know that there's a lot of stuff really wrong in U.S. politics. And they think they know who the bad guys are, and they want to change it so that it's a healthier country, which is also what almost every other group in the U.S. thinks, except that we often disagree on who we think the bad guys are and what needs to change for it to be healthier.
Right. So in this memeplex, this meme warfare, the memeing crisis, I'm really interested in how people will start to go down. Like, so I have several meme posting Facebook pages that I have liked and followed. So
because memes can be useful to kind of make the news very succinct and shareable.
So they're almost like networks. So there's one that I follow called "I Acknowledge That Psychedelic Class Warfare Exists." That is a very bizarre title, long-winded title for somebody who's posting things that may not have anything to do with any of those words.
It might not have anything to do with class warfare or psychedelics.
Right. But there is a thread that comes through. It's one person who's picking all the memes and making all the comments, and I find some of it ironic, some of it funny. When we start, and I have a number of those that I go through. Sometimes I repeat it, sometimes I just use them for my story. In that process, I also have a very diverse friends group. So I'm getting memes from a whole spectrum of mindsets and philosophies and perspectives. And I think in the great cleansing of our social media bubbles that so many people are doing because they're tired of hearing pro-Trumpers, or they're tired of hearing pro-Biden, or they're tired of hearing about Bernie, or they're tired of hearing about somebody, they just start Xing out an entire perspective from their worldview.
I'm just tired of hearing about that, so I'm just not going, like all the people, they're like, I don't want to hear any more anti-mask science because my daughter has asthma, and so I'm just not going to listen to any of your posts anymore.
So nuance is not something that we're favoring a lot in our rush to be repeaters of information and memes. So the way that this, just a dog pile on controversial subjects. If we're going to talk about what's happening in Minneapolis,
it's kind of all connected.
It is all connected. It's about how do you get your information, how do you discern what you're putting in your head, which is like a soup. My friend used to say, it's like.
Is it a savory soup?
It's
Wait, is this Laszlo?
Laszlo.
Laszlo. You have to say it like Laszlo.
Yeah, your head is like a bowl of soup, and whatever you put into it, he was concerned that I was taking too many drugs at the time. I said, well, you just had more soup. But,
balances out the seasoning.
He said the drugs were like spices,
Yeah.
and he's like, if you took too many spices, you mess up the soup. I'm like, yeah, I have more soup. So, more time. But in that process of putting things in your head that then is the makeup of what's going on in your thoughts and in your mind. If you don't have a broad perspective or diverse points of view, it becomes people get a little more surprised when things occur in the world outside their focus. And I think it's dangerous when we don't listen to other points of view. I got into, a friend of mine unfriended me last week because I said I don't think censorship is a good idea.
Done, blocked.
Because the Nazis were being censored, so therefore it was a good idea.
Right. How can you say censoring Nazis is okay? It's not okay. Wait.
So the problem with not having a nuanced perspective, and we brought this up last week, we dealt with this a couple of times where we were talking about the weird political / partisan divide that has come up in the realm of wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. It has become a political state. People assume that if you're not wearing a mask, then you also are going to stand in front of the Capitol with a gun and try to get your pizza place open back up again or something. It's not equivalent. And so when people say just wear the mask, what's it going to do to you? Yeah. It's not going to hurt you. It's about other people. Just wear the mask.
Why can't you just wear a mask?
Why can't you just wear the mask? With people like Ainsley and myself who came out of cult backgrounds where we were told just to do stuff, it's a little more difficult to just do stuff. Because I think we could have a more nuanced approach. I think it's important to wear a mask in certain conditions, in certain places with certain people.
Totally.
I don't think it's important to wear a mask, to have everybody wear a mask all the time, because as the CDC and the WHO and the Attorney General said before they changed their mind, when you wear a mask and you don't know how to wear it, you don't know how to use it, you end up making it worse for yourself and other people because you're not doing it properly. So just wearing a mask is not good enough. You can say you should wear a mask and this is how you do it, and this is when to do it. And part of the weird fear as virtue tsunami that I see sweeping across my timeline, fear as virtue.
You're a schmuck if you're not afraid.
Here is another dumb anecdote from people on the street that I experienced yesterday. So we come out of a bakery. There's a farmer's market that might as well not even be a farmer's market at that point. It's so weird. They have the booths spread out so only a few people can show up. They hand sanitizer for everybody and mask when you come in. And I understand it's social distancing, and I get it. I get that we have to do some of that stuff. But there's a lady on the corner, and we were deciding to go to the farmer's market and whether or not we were going to get a mask or if we're just going to put a bandana over our face. So we weren't wearing one because we just came out of eating a biscuit. So we don't have a mask on. And there's a lady out there that has a bandana from a health food store.
Yes.
It's just a bandana.
It's just a bandana.
Worn around her face with the branding of the health food store because it's a nice health food store in Missoula.
And she thought it was really keen that they were handing out bandanas. She has a cool bandana from that store.
She has a cool bandana with their name and logo on it. It's a nice health food store in Missoula. And she takes off the mask to show us the bandana.
And she's unfolding it.
With her hands, no glove, right?
She's already been in the farmer's market.
She's already been in the farmer's market. Now she's handling this bandana, showing us this neat bandana, and then starts to criticize us for not wearing masks because she has some immunocompromised situation.
Because she has asthma. So when she started handling her mask and showing us all the stuff, I'm like, oh, so she's probably, in my mind, because I'm thinking scientifically, I'm thinking, this is, for one, a bandana, not a special mask. For two, this lady is probably just wearing one because the rules say you have to wear one to go into the farmer's market. And she just thinks it's cute to wear one with this cool logo on it.
Right.
And then she says, no, friend, I have asthma, so you need to wear a mask. And I'm like, hit the brakes. That's not how science works.
No, everything she was doing was compromising herself. The mask was not a mask. She's handling it with her hands that she's handling everything else with, and then admonishing us for not taking care of her health. It was one of the dumbest things that I've seen in this whole mask controversy.
And there are a lot of anecdotes like that.
So many anecdotes.
Yeah.
So yes, masks are important. We can help protect people with masks. Just saying, just wear a mask, don't question it, don't talk about the wrong ways to wear a mask, don't talk about maybe masks aren't always the best thing in all the places. That conversation is getting shut down.
If I go see my friend with kidney failure or somebody whose friends has asthma or blah, 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 I will wear a mask. If I see you on the street and I'm so happy to see you after 3 months in quarantine, I'm going to use consent language, which I think is a great development.
Give you a hug or not give you a hug?
Are you okay with hugs? You know, we should do that more often anyway. So Astrid from Sweden, foreign correspondent, says, "Hi friends, we don't wear masks in Sweden, and that is the recommendation from our National Health Department. The reason is that people can't use them properly, and if they feel the slightest symptoms, we're not told to go out." So we had this fantastic news story that came around where some lady who was completely asymptomatic infected 4 people at an office meeting, and so that's where the asymptomatic story came from.
It came from Germany. The one lady who supposedly brought it to Germany.
Asymptomatically, she did, and then come to find out the news story says that one of her friends was like, yeah, she was just tired and had a bit of a sniffle, and so she went to her meeting anyway. I'm like, that's not asymptomatic then.
Yes, right.
That's you not recognizing your own health and pushing through your health issues to do what you think you need to do instead of taking care of yourself and the people around you.
So people who are in the memeplex, who shared the flatten the curve, cat in the curve, for the first few weeks, I thought this is a good use of social media stuff.
Yeah.
People are saying, hey, let's not overwhelm our healthcare system, and let's take care of each other by restraining ourselves a little bit. And we did. We flattened the curve. Suddenly we don't have enough respirators. Now we don't need the respirators apparently because it was a bad idea.
Yeah, it actually makes it worse.
So,
we thought it was a breathing problem. It's actually an oxygenation problem.
So we flattened the curve. We got a grip a little bit on some of what was going on. We're not overwhelming our healthcare system in the broad majority of our country right now. We're not overwhelming the system. So the idea that we should open up and go out and not be so afraid, and there will be more cases. That's the idea, right? There will continue to be more cases.
Yes.
As these cases come up, then we can get a handle on it, we can move forward, and everybody can get their coronavirus and get over it. Because most people are going to get it and get over it.
Like
a lot of people
virus.
are going to get it and never even get it. They're going to have it, but not have any symptoms.
But if you have hypertension, you should strongly consider taking safety measures for yourself.
But some people are still doing the flatten the curve idea. Some people are still like, no, we still have to stay inside. We've already done that part. And they're still working from the original meme. Memes need to change. New information comes in. Yes, wear a mask for a while until you realize that maybe everybody wearing masks and doing it improperly is not helping anybody. Wearing your baby's woobie as your woobie converted into a mask is psychological. Right. And we need to talk about the psychological aspect because that's important. But to pretend that it's medical and to pretend that it's happening on a medical way when it's mostly psychological is a conversation that needs to be had. You get shut down for having it.
Because black and white.
Because last week I posted this meme, and I'm just going to stick with the meme that I posted last week, even though this week there's no information. Yes.
So we have another correspondent live in Minneapolis who would like to call in and give us his perspective.
Call on the phone, or is he going to FaceTime?
He's going to call you on Facebook. Rob is a Butte local.
Mokai just turned in, by the way. We want to hear his letter before the end of the show.
Oh yeah, fantastic. I'll try to find that somewhere. So Rob is going to give us a call, and we're going to hear from him because he and his family members, and I don't know how much of their names to say online, because I know a lot of protesters are getting doxxed by crazy people.
Right, so he can tell us who he is.
So he's going to let us know how much information he wants to share and give us a perspective of what's going on and what sorts of involvement they've been having in the protests in Minneapolis right now.
All right, so we have Rob from Minneapolis on the phone right now. Rob, welcome to Post-Orthodoxy.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so we're having to do a thing where I have to turn off my microphone. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to turn off the microphone so that our Facebook people can hear you on our queue in the station, and then you can ask a question, and my microphone will come back on. So we're not doing a lot of quick back and forth. But I do want to say thanks for calling in. Maybe you can introduce yourself for folks that don't know you in whatever way you want to introduce yourselves, and give us your feedback on what you're seeing happening there in Minneapolis.
Sure, no problem. Let me know when.
You're good to go.
I'm good to go.
Yep.
So you're asking what my feedback is as far as which subject? There's so many to cover.
Well, as just your perspective of like being there on the street, what are you seeing? What is your reality like? What are you seeing on the streets? And what are you hearing from people who are connected to this directly?
Well, I think I'm going to back up here just a little bit. You guys were just talking about the coronavirus and how it's being treated different places. And I just want to mention that, the reason I'm even here, I came here a week ago and none of this was happening. I was literally here a day and then it hit the fan. And anyway, I came here, I hadn't seen my girlfriend for 4 months, so I loaded up the dog and I said, I gotta get out. I'm sick of,
Social
sitting
distancing.
in my warehouse. And so we got here and immediately I saw that almost everybody's wearing a mask. And unless they're like distanced far away or something, which that I wasn't seeing that in Butte at all. I saw a few masks here and there. In fact, I was getting dirty looks for wearing a mask.
It's been petering off pretty fast.
Pardon me?
It's been petering off in Butte pretty fast. People aren't wearing masks much anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's good or bad or what's going to happen with that. I'm not a medical expert by any means, but I know that here you're not allowed in a grocery store without a mask. You're not allowed in anywhere without it. The stuff is not open here. Grocery stores are open. Gas stations are open. Stuff like that. But you cannot go to the ice cream shop or the coffee shop and walk in. You can only do carry out or drive through, for one thing. And it's been like that for a while here because the cases are astronomical compared to, more rural states.
They probably have a higher population and also more tests per capita.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Although I will say this, in order to get some groceries, I had to go to the suburbs because everything is closed here because of the protests and the riots. Literally everything is boarded up and you can't get in. So we had to go out to the suburbs to get groceries, and a lot of them are not wearing masks, just like rural areas. Which did and did not make sense to me, but apparently go into the city.
Right.
People who live in the suburbs do not go to the city unless they absolutely have to. So I'm the opposite. I would much rather be in the city than go to the suburbs. But which brings me to your first question, Dark, is what have I seen on the streets? And literally, I heard about it the first day, like what was going on. And so, curiosity, Susan and her daughter are very much curious in that way. And Susan is a photographer. She's grabbed her camera and she goes, we gotta go check it out. And on the way there, I was just amazed at what had already been boarded up. And I'm like, oh, thank God that's not boarded up because I'm gonna go there tomorrow because I want to go, get ice cream at Sebastian Joe's. It's like my favorite. And so a lot of stuff wasn't boarded up, in Lowry Hills, which is in Uptown area. And going down Lake Street, which is one of my favorite areas too, by the way. I'm familiar with it because I come here quite a bit. You just started seeing more and more. You knew you were getting close to the war zone because of the spray painted, the murals, the derogatory. I can't swear on the radio.
Right, of course.
Derogatory words and things like that towards the police, towards the mayor, towards not so much the mayor, but mostly the police. But you've seen all of that. But it got more and more and more, and then you'd see the smoke coming, and then it's like, oh God, wow, what are we getting into? What are we getting into? And, you know, basically I would get more and more nervous. You know, a lot of anxiety building up, and we get there, and I'm just really nervous. You know, everybody has their masks on, so put on my mask, and we go in, and it's literally so peaceful. It's not even funny. This is daytime, by the way. And, you know, these people they're cleaning up aftermath with shovels and brooms and piling it into neat little tidy areas. You know, I'm talking bricks, rocks, glass, garbage, you know, whatever they're throwing around the night before. And it's been like this every day, by the way. But I was like, wow, I didn't expect this. I expected, you know, just mayhem. And all of these people are getting along, they're hugging, and they're happy, and they're crying, and they're chanting, and, you know, all religions, all colors. And I was just really, really impressed. And, you know, the more I talk to people, they're like, yeah, we're not the ones doing this, man. We're the ones here, we're protesting what happened, you know. We're not the ones causing all of this. You know, there were several buildings are burnt, and
do the locals? So you're the second person, Rob. Sorry, I know we've got a bit of delay on the phone call, so I just have to steamroll you for a second. I apologize about that. So we know that you're the second person we've talked to today who is in Minneapolis right now, who said the locals aren't the ones shooting or starting riots or burning buildings or anything. There might be some local people opportunistically going into a building to take stuff since everybody else is taking it. You know, you've got your human nature coming out or whatever. But in general, who do the locals, are there opinions going around or videos or any sort of information? Who are the instigators of the non-peaceful parts of this protest?
Oh yeah, they're sharing photographs of what they're wearing, the different groups, how to tell them apart. You know, there's guys going around with I think it's Antifa, going around with all black. They're wearing black bike helmets, black everything. And then there's other groups that are wearing all black, but they have red, you know how the SS wore the
armband.
The armbands, yeah. Are you seeing much action from groups?
These are like super, like, I don't know the word for it. It's like, if you're like ultra-Orthodox in religion, what are you if you're like really against colored people?
White supremacist? KKK, white supremacist?
Okay, white supremacist, I'll use that. I was thinking of another word. You know, they have on clown masks and Hawaiian shirts and all these different pieces of clothing, and each one of those pieces of clothing represents a different group that they hate.
Wow.
Right, so it's sort of like Escape from New York.
It's no kidding, man. It's crazy. I mean, it gives me chills just thinking about, like, and it's not just here. It's in all the major cities, it sounds like. I mean, I just really blown away.
Yeah, there do seem to be sympathy protests. We were just saying earlier, we had some protesters on the courthouse steps here in Butte. I've seen them in a couple places around town. I feel like they're kind of roaming different locations today with hashtag I can't breathe signs.
Yeah. Oh, they're everywhere. Everywhere, all kinds of messages. But like I said, they're not shoving it in your face. They're just being very casual about it. At few. 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. If you are out on the street, unless you have a place you're supposed to be going, like work or the airport or something, I mean, you gotta have a place to go. I don't know if they arrest you or if they write you a ticket or what they do, but I mean, they're very serious about it. When these people leave, they're gone by 8 p.m., man. And all these other people that come out of the woodwork, like, to cause mayhem. So
to jump subjects partially, you're on the ground, you're seeing things happen, you're talking with people who were there. Where else do you go, Rob, to get news that you feel like you can trust that doesn't have spin doctrine slathered all over it?
I just talk to the people. They're very willing to talk. And, you know, I met a guy yesterday that I was down ground zero down there, and it was 2 blocks away from 3rd Precinct and a block away from a post office that just got torched the night before. And there were buildings all along the block that were torched. And this building in particular, I think it was like a bail bonds building. I took pictures of it and video because it was just smoldering. And this guy comes up to me, this sweaty guy, comes up and he goes, "Yeah, that's my building." And he's just like beside himself. He's just like, he's so confused, man. He's just I don't know, he was a middle-aged white guy with a t-shirt on, drenched in sweat. And, it was about 70 degrees out. And the guy was just like, you could tell he'd been huffing and puffing, just like, he was really freaked out about this. I go, well, tell me about your building. I mean, were there any tenants? And he goes, no, I had renters, and they were closed down because of the coronavirus. And I go, what are you going to do? He goes, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to, I said, do you have insurance? He goes, yeah, I have like $1 million policy, I think, which is the minimum that you're supposed to have. And the county had got a hold of him, Hennepin County, and said, will you be interested in just buying your property if you don't want to rebuild? So I think they offered him $1.5 million. And
that's fascinating.
He's going to take the money and run, and you're going to see a lot of that. Minneapolis is building upwards, kind of like New York, where there's high-rise condos and stuff like that. So I have a feeling that the city's going to be buying up a lot of these properties.
One thing that I've been hearing from folks who, and I can only imagine that these are the empathetic perspectives of people who don't experience racism in their life, usually middle-aged white women who are saying, I mean, let's be real, who are saying things like, why are people, and we understand that there are kind of different forces at work here in Minneapolis, as there kind of are with almost any group of people. Why are you burning buildings when these lovely white citizens weren't the ones that killed George? And we heard from our foreign correspondent Christian in Germany, they have I can't breathe signs in Germany right now. So this awareness campaign is worldwide. And I think if I were to offer a why as to what good would it do to burn the buildings of white business owners when those people didn't do anything to the black community, I think that's where we need to get into a deeper conversation about benign racism and the inherent white privilege where you didn't do anything to the black community, but you also aren't putting your foot down about the things that are happening in the black community from your white neighbors.
Oh man, this opens a whole a whole can of worms here because everybody's talking, right? I hear everybody talking around here. They're like, and people are catching on to it that like, hey, these fires are not started by locals. You know, this is the type of community that really is very supportive of all of the, mom and pop businesses and small businesses and everything is really supported around here. That's one of the reasons I really love it here. But I don't know how they pick and choose what they want to destroy, but it seems to me that the people that I'm listening to, they all agree that it's outside sources, and we've all heard that on the news and social media that they are not starting the fires themselves. I mean, that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I own a company, a property, a building in Butte. I don't know. Why would I burn? I don't know. People are like, oh, they're burning themselves, or the locals are burning them. And I honestly, I guess the people that they've arrested for this stuff, and I've heard both sides. Some say 80% are out of towners, some say 20% are out of towners. We just don't know. So your guess is as good as mine, honestly.
Right, and why, and it doesn't really make sense that people in the community would burn businesses of the people in their community in response to violence against a member of their community. Rob, I'm really glad you called in. Dark, do you have something you wanted to ask him before we move on?
Yeah, well, I do. One comment is I feel like the idea, there's a trope, and it's very culturally racist trope, that when, and I say culturally, not necessarily racially, cultural trope that when people gather together, our worst side comes out and destruction ensues. And I've been on the front lines of a lot of different protests. The people that organize those protests and most of the people that come to those protests have come to make a statement, and it's not a riot, and it's not burning something down. And I've also been witness on the front lines to seeing agitators, some of them from law enforcement, come in and cause the problem in order to take action to dispel the crowd, because the crowd's not going away. So the only way to get them to go away is to have a public image reason for why they needed to start cracking people on the head with sticks. From the stories that you've been hearing from people there on the ground, it sounds like to me, you've already said, that most people don't believe it's local people doing the destructive part. Is there anything you want to share with folks in Radioland and on the podcast about things that you've gleaned from talking on the street that maybe we out here don't know?
About agent provocateurs?
Yeah, just, be careful not to be too quick to judge or too quick to post on social media, because, this community is just as tight as Butte, for example. Butte is a tight community. They really come together when stuff hits the fan. And so does Minneapolis. Don't be too quick to judge about something you know nothing about. There's a whole other thing going on over here that, just know the facts before you're going to just, put that out there, because a lot of people are getting really angry at each other. People that normally wouldn't be. And that's not the direction to go here. The direction here is to just support, what is right.
Yeah, Rob, I really appreciate that. And we're doing our best to get some factual information from folks on the ground by talking with people like you and our previous caller, Scott. So thanks for taking a minute out of your afternoon to call in on the fly.
No problem. No problem.
All right, we're gonna let you go now. Be safe out there and keep sharing facts when you find them.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much to Rob for calling in. He and members of his family have been on the streets in Minneapolis this past week, experiencing things firsthand of what's going on there. Chances are you might know somebody who's in the area. Dark had no idea he knew anybody in Minneapolis, and then we got in touch with a friend of his that had since moved there.
I put a shout out concerning what happened with the police station, which I'm still like, that's one of those stories that, okay, the police station burned, and I still don't know if I feel like I fully know what happened.
I don't think
story.
we do have the facts because we don't know who started the fire.
I think the image might be a crowd of people around it setting it on fire, and apparently there was not much activity around the police station when it was set on fire. And it had already been abandoned for some reason, which I don't understand. That whole thing. I also understand that, from what I understand of the small video of something happening there, there were the people who did break into the station and set it on fire were dressed in all black. So it seems to be one of these groups that did it.
There is a function, and I'll just let people know, because like we mentioned often on Post-Orthodoxy, we need to be kind to our neighbors and get to know our neighbors' different perspectives. And one of the perspectives that can be really useful is to get to know the different internet facility of different age demographics. And so for those of you that might be in an age group where you spent most of your puberty and early adulthood not using the internet.
Guilty.
There are ways to adapt and use this tool, such as Google image search. So if you see a post that's got some sort of a fire or a burning car or an injured person, you can click and drag that photo into the Google search bar, and it will pop up the results of what that photo is actually from. Because oftentimes when some people really do just want to watch the world burn.
Sure.
And there are people who want to watch the world burn who burn down buildings and loot stuff, and there are people who want to watch the world burn who spread sensational things on the internet just to keep the flame alive because otherwise they're bored. And so if you see a story that seems really sensational or dangerous or iffy, or you feel like, I know that town and that building isn't in that town, you can click and drag photos into the Google search bar to reverse engineer where those photos are actually from.
I know that yesterday I was talking to you, we went somewhere, we were driving the car, and I had seen on the news the fires had broken out, and maybe it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before yesterday, whatever. It's right when I found out about the fires in Minneapolis, and I was talking to you, and I said, I'm waiting for the images of the agent provocateur. I'm waiting for that image of like who actually started the fire. And then I get home, and the story of the supposed umbrella man who started this fire was just right there. And I was really quick to post that. And I did use the language on, this is not the guy that did it, but people are saying this is the guy that did it. His ex is saying that it looks like him, et cetera, et cetera. So I was qualifying the stuff, but I was so ready to post it.
You were so ready to know.
Because the argument was, why would they burn their own buildings? I'm like, look, They're not. They may not be doing it, right? So it's nice to have that post, and I was really ready to throw it out there because it feeds my point of view, and it comes from my experience. I'm watching this stuff happen.
So important.
So I immediately felt guilty for posting it because I'm like, we don't know.
We don't know.
This guy may not be the guy, and he's going to get doxxed, and he's going to have his life ruined, and he may be an actual real good cop out there, even though his girlfriend says he's a psycho. He may be a real good cop out there doing a real good job. I don't know.
Right.
So I know that urge.
But I feel like it'd probably be really easy for the 3rd Precinct to have said, actually, Jacob Pedersen was here all day. Instead they said, we know where he was all day.
And we're not telling him.
Yeah, and so I'm like, you had a chance there to just be real upfront about what's going on.
There's something I want to go to, which I started, which is the reason I interjected this mask controversy thing into this story about Minneapolis. Is talking about the mask and saying, I think it's important that we have informed discussions around what the mask is good for and when to use it, and that just wear a damn mask is not good enough. It's not good enough. I know that the CDC, the WHO, the Surgeon General went from...
And Fauci
went from, like, the standard, this is what Astrid said, the standard is, you don't wear a mask unless, because most people don't know how to use it. That's the standard common knowledge. For some reason that was changed so that this idea that everybody should wear a mask went out there. And I think, and this is just my supposition, this is just my conjecture, is that people are like, well, most people are dumb. We can't, this is too nuanced an argument to tell them how to wear a mask properly, so just tell everybody to wear it, which is not productive. And I brought that particular instance up, and we can talk forever, and there's a lot of people who are mad at me now because I said maybe we don't always need to wear a mask all the time. These are the discussions we need to have, and not everybody's willing to wade into that frame. I bring it up in relation to this story because of this reaction to all cops are bad thing. The memeplex is like all cops are bad, all cops are pigs. And I'm like, it's not that simple. I think it's important to talk about institutional racism. I did spend time in LA County with watching the blatant racism of the LA County Sheriff's Department in handling the people in that jail. And learning from people in the jail who had more experience in jail than I did.
Criminals? About
the racism of the department itself, the racism within the department itself. So somebody said, yeah, LA County Sheriff's Department is like the Valhalla for racists.
If you can get a job
there,
you'll be able to do whatever you want.
You can go crack some heads, and nobody's going to stop you. So we do have institutions that attract a racist element, and the police force is one of those institutions that relies on brotherhood, quote unquote, like a gang. That things happen when it's like whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Things happen in that job that you have to have a united front and protect your brothers.
Because sometimes sticky situations do happen.
Yes.
And you do need a protective group.
So that's what makes some of the whole police thing a little gangster related. So are there bad apples in the institution? Yes. Are those apples protected by elements within the institution? We know that. Does that mean every cop is a bad apple? No. And so there's this meme going around, like if there's 10 bad cops and 1,000 bad cops, don't say anything about the 10 bad cops, then there's 1,010 bad cops. That simplistic math is not, it's too simplistic.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the institutional racism. We need to also not cop bash as a whole. And we can talk about elements within the institution. We can talk about the white supremacist elements. And if you're looking at the guy that's busting the windows, that's why this should be one of the biggest stories right now. We should find out who that guy is, what his motivation is, who he might be protected by, because the police station said that's not him. If it was him and the police station said that might be indicative of some sort of inherent institutional problem that needs to be addressed.
And if we all
for the sake of the other cops.
If we all get our sleep and eat our vegetables, then we can have the energy and the mental well-being to hold those paradoxes in our minds at the same time. These are the sorts of conversations people avoid because we're all tired, like we're all single moms working 3 jobs with 2 kids. And
all of us.
All of us. And so everybody has a reason why they're exhausted and they don't have time for difficult conversations.
Right.
But if we're going to have change, we can't keep doing the same things. Like insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Right.
Like insanity is expecting a different experience in this country while saying, but we're not going to change it right now.
Or why you yourself watching the story isn't making some changes.
You are not making any changes.
Right.
You are society. You are building society. Society would not exist without humans. Therefore, each human is a piece of society, and you are part of crafting it and creating it by the work that you choose to do or choose not to do. And I know that it's exhausting to say, not all cops are racist, and also we have a big racism problem in our police force. It's tiring and complicated.
And a lot of police forces. It's town to town. It's city to city. And those things are like brotherhoods, they're like fraternities. It's not something you can just go and clean out very easily, because those connections go deep and they go beyond. They go beyond the institution itself. So it's not easy to say, oh, there's some racists at this police station, we should take care of them. We deal with the topic of conspiracy on our show a lot. We talked about that last week. Well, conspiracy is conspiring, breathing together towards some plan that other general folks are not hip to.
Conspiracies are real. Conspiracies are
Conspiracies happen, right?
when people get together and make a plan that affects everybody without everybody knowing.
This pejoratification.
I like it.
Pejoritizing? Stigmatization of conspiracy theory is really disturbing. I've said it over and over and over. The CIA has admitted that they weaponize the term conspiracy theory so that anybody who starts talking about an actual conspiracy that they are theorizing about that is detrimental to the general public is seen as a kook.
A nutter.
So if you're somebody trying to address a systemic problem by wondering and connecting real facts and circumstantial to arrive at some conclusion that might enlighten you, that is now being seen as a bad thing, which I think is really dangerous.
I mean, it's basically saying there are certain things we're just not allowed to think about.
It used to be right-wing conspiracy. It used to be conspiracy guys with a left wing. Now, for some reason, they're the right wing. And I bring up the conspiracy thing again because what I do, one reason I have been an avid conspiracy analyst for a long time is because the narratives that come out over time in the realm of conspiracy theory often are intuitive, like the Charles Eisenstein article that we were discussing last week.
Yes.
Sometimes there's intuitive information that you're feeling, that people are feeling. They find something in their environment that confirms the feeling, and then you're off on a conspiracy theory to try to connect your feeling with some real-world implication that verifies your feeling.
That's not correct science.
No, that's not correct science.
You're supposed to make a hypothesis and then go where the information and the facts lead your hypothesis, not just only take facts that support your hypothesis.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
As for the conspiracy news.
So not all conspiracy theorists
are equal.
Hashtag not all conspiracy theorists.
So I think there's things going on here. Rob, my conspiracy radar goes off when you start finding out all these buildings are burning, and then there's real estate speculators that are looking to build a tall building where the short buildings were.
Don't cash in your insurance policy and keep it. We'll buy it off you.
Right. So that makes me want to start to go down the economic real estate rabbit hole, the socioeconomic landscape of where the fires are.
Which is a conspiracy that has been verified that this is what people in power with money do.
That happens.
When regular schmucks like us lose their property for a reason, people in power with money buy them all up and make more money off of them.
So in the conspiracy realm right now, the idea, this goes along with a lot of QAnon stuff, and it operates outside the QAnon stuff, the idea that the race riots were pending. So first we have this pandemic, and this is a global pandemic. It's not just Trump didn't just make a pandemic in America.
It's not just the US, guys.
No, there's a global pandemic. There were actions taken by a bunch of different countries. Not everybody got it right. Not everybody got it wrong. None of them were coordinated. Different things were tried out, and we're going to see how it shakes out. However, in this country, the story with the conspiracy, the sort of more discerning conspiracy folks that are looking into how things work, I think it's interesting that a lot of people were put into a stress position financially for 3 months. Did the stress position for 3 months? Here's one version of the story. So people are stressed out. So there's a protest. Broke people went and stole stuff. That's one narrative.
Okay.
The other narrative is that this was set up in order to facilitate social unrest, so that you financially put people in a financial stress position. Then when the business goes down, like what we're seeing in all these cities, people are more prone to be destructive because they're stressed. They're more prone to burn a building, loot a store, because they're literally starving.
Have to burn off steam.
So
and literally starving.
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
Is this just an opportune time for poor people to get theirs by breaking into a store, or is this an opportune time to increase police surveillance?
By creating a situation where poor people commit desperate acts because of systemic oppression.
So then you can just validate all the old stereotypes. Look what those people do. Anyway, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this stuff shakes down in the next few weeks. The thing is that the stories are unfolding so fast that we don't have time to go back and digest. I think it's important to find out what happened with the police station in Minneapolis, because we just let it go under the radar, because now we're focusing
well,
on Los Angeles, we're
things
focusing we're focusing, like, that story is interesting to me, because there was a particular element that set it on fire.
I think it's a fortified building with weapons.
The cops left the building. A small group of people started the fire. There wasn't a massive gathering around the fire station.
Rushed in as the cops left.
No. But that story is a weirdly obscure story of how the police station burned, why the cops abandoned it, why they abandoned there seemed to be no reason to abandon it when it was abandoned.
Yeah.
It wasn't under siege at the time.
Right.
So there's stories like that I feel like if we can get to the bottom of that story, or at least find some more pertinent information about that story, that helps us understand the cascade effect of things that came after. So what happened on the street where George was murdered, and where the shrine, there was a shrine created where
As
people
usually
a
happens.
memorial shrine,
Teddy bears, flowers.
and then the police rushed through, broke up a peaceful protest, and trampled a part of the shrine. That's not going to be cops trampling a shrine to commemorate somebody being abused by police
Murdered
power.
by a cop. Yeah. Like it seems like
That's not inciting something?
It seems like if the precinct was really ashamed and unhappy about what their employees did, they would absolutely make sure to definitely not trample over the memorial to the guy murdered by the cops.
Don't step on the flowers, maybe?
Guys, it's going to be a tough time for cops out there tonight because of one of the bad cops did.
Yeah.
Don't step on the memorial to the guy that was murdered by the cops.
So that's the kind of stuff that we don't have. We just have this sort of, if it leads kind of journalism, and the stories are moving so fast. That's why I wanted to focus on that police station, and I still don't. I didn't get to the bottom of it. It seems that the stomping of the memorial had something to do with the destruction of the police department in one way or the other, from all the little spurious pieces I'm putting together, but I'm still searching that one out.
Yeah, that and the Umbrella Man.
So apparently, the Umbrella Man, after busting the windows, apparently, this is what I've heard, I didn't see it, I don't know, he walked back to that precinct.
So
and then later on, the precinct was abandoned and burned.
Right.
All that is, and the people who set the building on fire apparently were wearing a very similar getup to what that guy was wearing. So these are things worth considering.
Yeah, so it's
Not
already.
letting you just go down the memory hole.
It's already 5:52 in the afternoon. You've been listening to Post-Orthodoxy on KVMF. Up next, we have Dan and Patty with a Sunday Smackdown from 6 to 8.
He's out in the hallway right now, waiting for us to shut up so we can get in the studio.
So I wanted to let people know, because in this tough and trying time, where things are kind of depressing.
Yes.
And it's hard to do stuff that makes you still feel like a human. It's hard to thrive, not just survive. The Silverboat Drive-In is open for business as of this weekend. And they are doing movies every weekend this summer. This weekend they're doing The Call of the Wild, which is a PG movie about a man and his dog, and it's got Harrison Ford, so I mean, of course we have to see it. And then side two, the second movie is Bad Boys for Life, which is an adult movie about some bros on a last-ditch ride or die bucket list sort of adventure. And so that's every evening. The gates to the Silverboat Drive-In open at 8:30. And the movies start about 9:30, and they have concessions. You're not supposed to bring your own snacks in the vehicle with you, but they do have concessions there for you to purchase. And I just think that's really important for people to know that that's an option.
There's outdoor options.
The Washoe Theater as well has also been showing movies.
Somebody said for free for a while. Are they still doing that?
I don't know.
No. Anyway, that was a qualification, and
that's why I said I don't know.
Right. So I would like to say. Do you want to say something about the missing cat before we go?
I do, actually. That was my other bit of news. As one of our lovely DJs, Addie of Addie's Mixed Tunes, has a missing kitty cat, missing from the corner of Copper and Alaska Street in Uptown Butte. This cat likes to hang out at the original, And his name is Shadow. He doesn't have a collar. He's a Siamese.
with a feral nick in the ear.
He's got that little notch in his ear. So if you see a Siamese with the notch in his ear, that means he was adopted by a shelter as a feral kitty. He's a well-beloved kitty and a member of a household. Please call 406-459-5594.
Or you can call this radio station.
406-782-2263.
And we'll put you in touch with the person.
Yes, if you've seen a missing Siamese kitty. Been gone longer than normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into your community radio station and supporting this community resource so that we can hear information from non-compromised sources.
Yeah, guys. Good luck out there. It's not easy, and we salute your efforts. Thank you so much for participating this afternoon. I'll be back on Thursday for the Jolly Roger from 5 to 6 p.m., which is a kid co-hosted talk radio show. Are you going to play a song for us?
I've got something lined up so we can get Daniel in here.
Sweet, let's do it.
All right, stay tuned, folks.
Oh, I like this piece. It's so weird. Thank you to all of our live stream people. We really appreciate you guys. What piece are we playing so I can tell them so they can listen to it?
Oh, well, there's no words. This is Shuta Hasanuma Uzan.
Oh, I like that one.
It's a track called Mixed Bathing World.
Mixed Bathing World. Very weird song. Okay, guys, we appreciate you all. Good luck.